this episode of the Wagging Tales podcast. This is episode 37. We are going to be starting a group of podcast episodes. This group is called Kids and Canines. In this Kids and Canine section of episodes, we'll be going through different portions of how to keep families and dogs safe and comfortable together. This is an incredibly important topic, and it's a topic that all too often you see, even in the last week, and I'm not mentioning names, but we have had 2 different dogs that I know of who have been given up, rehomed as it were, because of kids in the house. Now, the thing that bothers me most about these ones is that the dogs haven't done anything wrong. There's nothing happened to the kids. It's just because they're busy, and they're doing other things, and the dogs are no longer the priority. That's a big factor, and it really upsets me when I see that happen. The other ones I've seen are dogs getting into trouble because the kids won't leave them alone. There was a horrible situation, and again, I won't go into full details, but effectively, dog was at home, on his bed, in his safe spot. Kid was over there for a night out with the owners and the kid's parents, and the kid would not leave the dog alone. The dog was in his bed, the dog was trying to rest, the dog wanted to get away. The kid kept tugging and hugging and kissing and pulling the dog, and after about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, the dog literally just pushed the kid away with a paw, scratched down the kid's back, and the kid's owners threatened to have the dog destroyed. Now, yes, there's stuff that the dog owner should have done differently there. That is for sure. But the bigger point of the matter is that the kids' parents should have been parenting. Okay? Now, that's exactly what we're talking about today. Building safe and happy relationships between families and dogs does not just come from the actual dog and dog owners themselves. It comes from the children, it comes from the children's parents. Now, this is not just coming to you as a behavioural consultant. This is not just coming to you as a trainer. This is coming to you as a dog owner. This is coming to you as a parent of a toddler. Keeping your children and your dog safe together is a huge topic, something that we're going to be going in deep. Okay, today we are talking about what kids must know, what children need to know so that the dogs can feel comfortable. I hear the parents in the background. Oh no, I want my kids to be safe. I don't care about the dog's comfort. Yeah, you do. I'll tell you that right now. You must care about that dog's comfort, because the only thing that keeps everybody in the household safe from that dog is that dog feeling comfortable. That dog's comfort level should be number 1, because if the dog does not feel comfortable, that's when people are unsafe. Okay, so that is something that people need to get their head wrapped around a little bit. It's not about showing the dog who's boss or showing the dog they can't do X, Y, and Z. That's some alpha BS that needs to be left very heavily in the past. Okay? I've always had a problem with things like that when people start referring to themselves as alphas and stuff like that. It shows a real weakness. And you need to be careful of people in your household like that when it comes to your dog. If you've got people coming into your home and they've got children and they start talking about showing the dog that they are not allowed to do things, that's a red flag. That is something that we need to work on with regards to keeping our dogs safe. Okay? Slight side note there, that actually came from a little pain point that I've had from the situation that happened earlier on this week. Okay. Teaching children about dogs. The biggest thing that children need to start to understand is what the dog is trying to tell them. Huge topic here. So I'm not going to go massively deep into it because it will take a lot of time. What I will suggest is If you go onto our website, go onto the blogs and just type in calming signals, you'll find an article I wrote years ago which does show pictures of different dogs showing discomfort and things like that, which may be worth looking at for anybody. And indeed, if you have children, worth going on there and actually having your kids look at that so they can identify when the dogs are not feeling comfortable. It's something that we've done with my daughter heavily because I want her to be able to read the dogs. And I know that it's something coming from me that does this for a living, but I don't want her to get hurt. And we've got 3 big dogs in the house, and it doesn't matter how well trained the dogs are, the dogs must feel comfortable or there's always going to be that risk. So the first thing you've got to understand is teaching the kids how to read that body language, the simple stuff. We're not expecting children to be able to read the individual nuance of dog behavior and dog body language, but they should be able to recognize the simple stuff. Is the dog stiffening up? Is there stiffening body posture in the dog? Is the dog's eyes going wide? Are you getting those whale eyes? Are their ears pinning back? Are the ears looking as if they're uncomfortable? Or is the dog licking their lips and lapping their lips? Is the dog giving verbal signs? Is there low growls? Is there barks? Or even the small barking? Yeah, people might think, oh, it's so cute, it's so cute, it's so cute. No, it's not. The dog is trying to communicate discomfort. Okay? Yes, you do get playful growls, don't get me wrong, but you've got to look at the context. So children need to know what the basics are so that they can then turn to an adult and say, hey, what's Fido trying to tell me here? Okay? Because if they don't have that in them, it's going to be a real risk. And we don't want that for our children or for our dogs, to be honest. So there's certain elements, such as being able to understand that a wagging tail is not always happy, right? This is something that I feel I need to talk to a lot of people about. I don't have a tail, so I'm going to use my arm, or I'm going to explain it better for those that are just listening. Wide wagging motions, that's happy. If the dog's spinning all the way around, that's very excited and very happy. If the dog's tail is high and rapid, that's not necessarily happy. That rapid tail movement can mean that there is a potential risk. Okay? This is something that we need to make sure that kids understand so that they will stop. If the tail is tucked and low, most people know that that means that the dog is actually unhappy. So we need to ensure that we are doing our due diligence and making sure our children understand these. It prevents incidents. It prevents potential problems, which can really be the difference between a child being hurt and between a dog and a child getting on really, really well. So that is something that is incredibly important. Again, check out the website. Make sure that you're looking at the calming signals and educate your children on how to read those. We will be coming up with more courses online in particular, which will be teaching people how to educate their children, how to set their household up for dogs and kids. All of these things will be coming up fairly soon. So make sure that you're keeping an eye out for that if this is something that concerns you and something that you feel would be really beneficial to your household. This is where, as parents, it becomes incredibly important to ensure that the children and the child understands what safe interactions look like and how to actually go about them. Biggest thing, children must understand that they should and must always ask permission before approaching a dog. This does not matter if it is their own dog. It does not matter if it's a very friendly looking dog out in the street that's with children. They must always ask both their parent or their guardian, as well as the dog handler. You do not know if that dog is friendly with certain children and not others. For example, Athos, our big black dog, he lets Freya get away with blue murder. But if another child touches him, he looks at that child like it's got two heads and then walks away. Now that's fine. It means the child's perfectly safe. Athos isn't going to do anything, but he doesn't enjoy it. He doesn't enjoy other children the same way that he enjoys Freya. Whereas the other two dogs, they actually quite enjoy being around kids and playing with them and things like that. Every dog is different. Children need to understand this. Dogs are not robots. To be honest, a lot of adults need to understand that as well. So always ask permission. We practice this, and I do this with Freya on the regular. We see another dog. Oh, look, Daddy, a doggy. Oh, that's nice, Freya. Do you want to pet the doggy? Yes, okay, Daddy. Okay, you know what to do. You need to ask to see if it's okay to pet the doggy. And then she'll stop and she'll say, Hello, my name's Freya. This is Daddy. Can I pet your dog? And the owner will either say, Oh, yes, that's absolutely fine, or she's actually a wee bit scared. Please don't. And I have had to teach Freya to respect that. Now, that might sound easier said than done, but it's worth it. And there has been times where people have said, oh, actually, the dog's a wee bit nervous, prefer you not to. And I'll say, oh, sorry, Freya, we can't pet the dog. And yes, of course, she's got upset. But it's teaching her that she should not and cannot just go and pet any dog. Even though she grows up in a household with dogs, even though she's grown up with a dad like me who's constantly around dogs that are potentially dangerous as well, and she knows that that is something that needs to be done, must always ask permission. Approaching dogs appropriately. Kids must understand this as well, as should all adults, actually. It's a big one for adults as well, because I notice a lot of adults don't do it. These rules should probably go for everybody, to be quite honest. Always approach dogs calmly. Don't ever go, oh, hello, doggy, and reach out all excited. Yeah, you might come across some dogs that like that. Most dogs don't. Okay? I wouldn't like it if you met me for the first time, randomly put your hand on my face and start getting all excited. Yes, I know my beard is very soft. It doesn't mean it's okay for you to stroke it without asking. And that goes for the same for the dog's fur. Okay? So that's something that you need to be aware of when you're approaching a dog, let alone if it's your kid that's approaching the dog. And yes, especially if they're stray dogs, especially if they're rescue dogs or dogs that have had potential trauma in the past. You don't know what these dogs have been through. You don't know what any dog has been through for that matter. But it's incredibly important not to shock a dog that could potentially react out of no fault of their own because of something that they've had in the past. So gentle, calmly, always approaching gently. Let the dog come to you or to the child for the last few steps. Do not approach all the way. You know, you could almost joke that it's like what you're told when you're trying to go in for your first kiss. Oh no, don't go all the way. That's showing a little bit too much keenness. If you go all the way in, that's a bit too forceful. It's the same for petting a dog. Don't rush in at the dog. You can go about, a third of the way there, maybe even half if it's the right dog, but the dog must come to you as well. Now, this does come to a point that we'll talk about later on. Do not kiss dogs, okay? Just don't. But letting the dog approach the child approaches their portion of the way very, very gently and very, very calmly. Again, practice this with your children. Practice it with a fake dog. Practice it with a dog that you know and you can trust. Practice it with your own dogs so that when your child comes across strange dogs that are with other people or anything else, they are not complete novice at this. Okay? Touching the dogs. Do not pull the dog's ears. Do not pet the dog hard. Do not pull the dog's tail. Do not ruffle the dog too hard. You see people all the time ruffling the dog super hard. I don't even have a fake dog or a real dog here. That's very strange for this household that I don't have any form of dog in the house or in the room. I'm sure they're outside the room. But you cannot be too rough. You might see owners with the dogs that they know they love and they trust, and they'll be ruffling the dog up and stuff like that. The dogs know and trust that person. In particular, children should not be doing that to dogs. I don't have Freya doing that to our dogs, and my dogs love that girl to bits. If she gets too rough with the dogs, I ask her to calm down and gently pet them. And actually, I ask her to apologise to them just to put that message across that it's not okay to be doing that. If she's going pat, 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 I will say to her, "Oh, Freya, that's a bit too rough. Please be gentle." Make sure that they're petting the middle of the dog's back or underneath at the dog's chest. That's it for kids. Okay? I know that some dogs love being scratched under the chin. I know that some dogs love being scratched behind the ears. If that's a dog you know and trust, it's your dog and you've got your child, yes, okay, you can teach them that. But if the child and the dog do not know each other intimately and you do not know for a fact it's going to be okay, you are only going to be looking at the back and the chest. And even then, you're going to be careful and always, always supervising. No pulling of the tail, no pulling of the ears, no sticking your fingers in the ears, no sticking your fingers in the mouth. All of that stuff should be standard. But you see adults doing it all the time. Okay? So that is a big safety interaction as well. Avoid sudden movements. This should be a given as well. Some dogs get skittish. Kids moving fast will scare them, could trigger either a reaction or could trigger overexcitement, which could also lead to an injury. It's very, very important that you practice that as well and the children understand it. If you are struggling to have your child understand these things, you must make sure that you can keep distance with dogs you do not know and trust. That might sound harsh, but it is true. Last, and certainly not least with safe interactions, no hugging. Okay? People think this is cute. Oh, look at the kid hugging the dog. Oh, look, it's fine, it's fine. Trust me when I tell you this, if you can read dog body language and calming signals properly, there is 1 in a million videos on that internet where the actual dog is comfortable. 99.9999999% of the time, the dog is not comfortable. Okay? Most of the time, these dogs are tolerating the children hugging them. They are certainly not enjoying it. Don't put your dog through that. Don't put your child at risk. Okay? Dogs do not have shoulders like ours. I love a hug, but I don't hug my dogs that often, or at all, actually, because they don't do it. Okay? When you put your arms around a dog, you're putting them into a vulnerable position. They might tolerate it better with you as the dog's owner or guardian or parent. They might even tolerate it with your children, but it is not something that you want to be putting your dog through, and it's not something that you want a child to be going through because that is a potential danger. And of course, respect the dog's personal space. That is a given. Don't put your face to face with dogs. There was a horrible story of a guy that had come back. He'd had way too much to drink. That's okay, no judgments there. But he went in, dog was sound asleep, went down onto the dog bed, put his face nose to nose with the dog, got all excited. The dog woke up, got startled, bit the man's face, and it was about 50 odd stitches in the guy's face. Is that the dog's fault? No, not even a little bit. In which world people think that it's okay to wake somebody up like that and assume that the person being woken up should just accept it because they're a different kind of animal to the other? That's madness. Okay? Respect the dog's space. And that leads us on to the nice one of boundaries and rules, right? And I am using examples here, and I'm not sugarcoating. I'm not using names. But I am using real examples so that people can see that these are not made up situations. Things go wrong. And it's important that these guidelines, these rules, these teachings are what's used to actually ensure that people are safe and kids are safe. So establish clear rules for kids and dogs. I'll show you the rules in our house. When we have play dates, when we've got people around, when we've got guests around, adults or children, they are not allowed in the master bedroom. Now, personally, I kind of think that should be a given, but that's because as well, the master bedroom is the dog's safe zone. This is where the dogs can go to escape from the chaos of guests. This is something that I feel is incredibly important because if the dogs are feeling overwhelmed, if the dogs are feeling stressed, they need to be able to get out of there. And that's very, very much a key component of keeping people safe and the dogs comfortable and safe. So we've got a baby gate at the master bedroom. The dogs look unsure, they look uncomfortable. I'll actually ask the dogs to go in. I'll just say, hey guys, do you want to just go in and lie down for a bit? And we'll let them go. Having that safe zone is very, very important, and children need to respect it. And incredibly important, adults, parents, they must respect it as well and parent their children. Do not expect the dog owners to parent their children. That's not okay. They're your children, you parent them, you know the rules as well as everybody else. Okay? That goes to, there's another horrible situation where this was not listened to. The dog had a separate room. That separate room was the dog's safe zone. The children that were visiting that house were told, do not go into that room. Do not disturb the dog on the dog bed. Do not touch the dog's toys. These were the boundaries, the clear rules. The rules also cover do not wake a sleeping dog. Let sleeping dogs lie is one of the most famous sayings on the planet. Let sleeping dogs lie is there for a reason. If the dog is playing with a toy, if the dog is chewing a chew or a bone, leave the dog be. This child, who I think was about 10, so old enough to know, went into the dog's room while the dog was playing with his toys and tried to take the toy off of the dog bed with the dog on it. She bent down with her face right in the dog's face. What do you think happened? The dog turned, snapped. The girl got nicked in the face. Parents had a hissy fit, and the dog ended up being put down. To me, that's completely out of order. That dog lost its life because the dog owners were not on the ball, because the kid's parents were not on the ball. I'm not going to blame the children. I'm not going to blame the dog because the dog's a dog. He had behavioural issues, but the parents and the dog owners knew that there was behavioural issues there. That's why the rules were in place. The kid's 10, but if the parents hadn't taught her these rules, then that's not her fault either. Parents and dog owners is what that boils down to. That's a true story. Bear that in mind when you're talking to your kids about these rules. Maybe don't scar them for life by sharing these sort of stories, but it is very important that we understand how serious these actually are. Okay? Kids should not ever chase dogs. In fact, I actually think it's a bad idea to chase your dog at all. I've got a video on that as well, but the long and short of it is, if your dog thinks that being chased is a game in an emergency when you need to try and take your dog out of the house and you try to run after them, there's a high chance they'll run away. So it's not something that I actually advise anybody to do. Don't chase your dogs. So kids especially shouldn't be chasing their dogs. They want to play chase? Great, have the dog chase them. Have the dog chase them and hold a ball in their hand so that when the dog gets close, they can throw the ball and the dog deviates away and doesn't get overexcited with the kids. That's safe chase with a dog. Encourage calm, structured play, fetch, tug, things like that. Scent games. Kids love scent games because that's effectively hide and seek. You know, there's loads of ways that children and dogs can play. Do it safely, do it smart. Okay? Set predictable environments. If you know there's going to be a play date, have the play date away from where the dogs are, and vice versa. Let the dogs interact a little bit if they're good, and then move away again. There's no reason at all for the dogs to 100% constantly be with a group of kids. It's very overwhelming for dogs, even dogs that really enjoy it. So bear that in mind as well. Now, we are talking about what kids need to know about dogs, but for this next point to actually work, the dog must have been taught some basic things. So most of all, I always say the very, very least, your dog should be able to sit, your dog should be able to stay, and your dog should be able to leave it. Okay, at the very, very least. If the children understand sit, stay, and leave it, they can use those commands to keep themselves safe. If the dog gets over excited or upset, the kid can go leave it, and the kid can back away slowly. Okay, that is something that I always say is very important. Freya knows these. Freya also sends the dogs to bed. Admittedly, the times that she uses it is mostly if they're disturbing her when she's playing Lego. The other day we had a funny one where she was playing with her Lego. Athos walked over the top of her and knocked the tower over. And she got so upset and so frustrated, and she was like, oh, Athos, bed. And you just saw Athos kind of going to bed as if he'd just, the worst thing in the world had happened. And he kind of was like, oh, okay, she's told me to go to bed. And he went to bed. Silly little example, but if that example had been with a dog that was getting overexcited or a dog that was getting upset, that could actually have been very useful. So these basic commands, nothing complicated. Sit, stay, leave it. You know, bed doesn't need to be that one. That's just one that Freya uses. So kids learn from repetition. If you've got a dog in the house, you've got to use the training properly so that your kid learns how to use it properly. Turn it into games. Use sit, stay. Then the kid runs away and hide. Shouts come. The dog finds them. They get a treat. That's hide and seek. But it's also teaching the children how to use these basic commands to keep them safe. Okay? So don't underestimate how clever your children actually are. A lot of people, oh, they're just kids. Do you know what? Freya's 3.5 and doing that. Okay, so it's not, you shouldn't underestimate them at all when it comes to things like that. Okay, supervision and responsibility. This is one where it can come across a little bit harsh, but at the end of the day, supervision is crucial. You do not leave children and dogs alone together. You just don't. Children are unpredictable. Dogs can get nervous. I trust my dogs more than most people will trust their dogs, but Freya's not left alone with them. She's not. You might see some of the videos and some of the pictures on our pages, and you think, oh, that's really cute. Freya can walk the dogs. Freya can, sleep beside the dogs and stuff like that. Yeah, she can, but we are always there. She never gets left alone with them. Supervision is very, very important. And in particular, close supervision is very, very important at the early stages, especially when you're introducing a child to a dog. One of the things that was very clear to me when the situation that happened earlier this week where the child got scratched by the dog is the father of the child was clearly drunk. Because when I was being told about this story, there's nobody that was sober that would react the way that man did. If you are looking after your child and there's a dog in the house, here's an idea. Maybe don't get inebriated to the point where you can't look after your child. Maybe pay attention. Supervision is your sole responsibility as the parent. If you're not supervising your child, you are not able to parent them when you're in somebody else's house. Unless your child is old enough to know what they should and should not be doing. But at the earlier stages, when that child's a toddler, a young child, that's not something that should be assumed. You can't assume that somebody else is doing the parenting for you. That's not good parenting, I'm sorry. So supervision is crucial. You need to be on that ball. And if you're not, it's not the dog's fault. It's never the dog's fault. Okay? Baby gates, play pens, child play areas. When Freya was very young, and what I suggest to a lot of my clients, if not all of them, when they've got kids that are very small kids, yes, you want baby gates to keep the dogs behind. You might want to have even play pens for certain dogs. But if the dogs are adults, the dogs have been out of those play pens, you want to have play pens for the kids. Put the kids in the playpen. That's fine too. Keeps the kid safe, keeps the dog understanding boundaries. That's very, very important as well. But we'll talk about the boundaries that dogs need to understand on a different podcast. But these baby gates, play pens, separate areas of the house, gated communities, very, very important. If you're having to leave your child unattended to watch a bit of TV while you're cooking dinner, put the dogs behind the baby gate in a different room, give them something to chew on, let them chill out there. Don't leave them to mingle because that means you're not supervising. Okay? Involve your kids in caring for the dogs. Freya helps feed the dogs. She helps walk the dogs. This is not flex, guys. This is not to say, oh, we get her to walk the dogs because it's good for Instagram videos. No, it's not that at all. Although that particular Instagram video did quite well. But the reason we do that is it shows Freya respect for the dogs. It shows Freya how to be with the dogs. She's much better with the dogs because she is involved. And I urge people to have their children doing the same. Dog's water bowl needs topped up. Give your kid a bottle of water to pour into the water bowl. That allows the dogs to see that the child is also caring for them as well. It's all part of it. If the dogs show any kind of discomfort around the child, teach the child to calmly walk away. Okay? Happens rarely, but when Freya gets a bit too much, well, no, that doesn't happen rarely. Freya does get a bit too much fairly regularly, but if she gets too much with the dogs and the dogs show real discomfort, like really kind of like, oh, don't like this, or even if you hear a low growl or something like that, that's okay. The dogs are just communicating. Make sure that the child knows to back away, come to the parent so that you can reassure them it's okay. They're just not very happy with what you were doing there. You need to understand not to do that. Put the onus on the humans, not on the dogs. If the dogs are doing something wrong, all that means is we need to educate them. We'll talk about that in another podcast, I promise you. But we need to understand that you can't expect the dog to know things that they've not been taught. And you can't expect children to know things that they've not been taught. See? So it all comes back round to this. The kids need to understand the importance of letting parents know what's been happening with the dogs. If something happens out of your eyes, the kid needs to say, oh, the dog did this. The other day, and I do not blame my dog at all for this. This was Freya through and through, but she was very good to tell me. She had it's like a fruit roll-up thing, basically just apple in a sandwich thing. And she was eating it. And she was doing this, like walking around like this. And she put it down on the floor because kids do that. And Athos ate it. And the first thing she says, oh, Daddy, Athos ate my roll-up. I was like, oh, okay, where did you put it? She was like, I put it on the floor right there. And I was like, well, you put food on the floor. You're kind of telling the dogs that it's okay for them to eat. Please don't do that. And she was like, oh, okay, Daddy. Can I have another one? Yes, of course you can. But don't put this one on the floor. That might seem like a really simple thing, but if she's used to telling me things like that, if anything goes wrong, like there's a proper snap or a growl, I know about it. And it's not so I can punish the dog, because that's not how you deal with these situations. It's so that I can then educate Freya and then educate and train the dog so that both parties know they can walk away. They don't need to allow that animosity to grow. That is basically what we're wanting when it comes down to kids and dogs. So I do know that I've been going on a little bit about this, so I'm just going to wrap this up a little bit, guys. And if you have any questions about this, please do not hesitate to put them in the comments. Please don't hesitate to message us, let us know, and we will get back to you. We'll also be doing more podcasts on kids and canines. This one was just about what kids need to know about the dogs. We'll be talking about preparing your dog for newborn babies, bringing a dog back to a home with children. If you don't have kids and you've got people coming to stay that have kids, we'll be addressing that as well. And any topic surrounding this that you guys might have in your minds, please let us know, and I'll certainly address it. Okay, the podcast here, I can't go into it so deeply that I can have you fully prepared, but at least I can give you a really good idea. And what we will be doing is we'll be churning out online programs for people that are overseas or maybe don't have the opportunity to actually have us come into their home to help. It means that we can help more and more people with this, because honestly, it breaks my heart every time I hear about a dog being abandoned or a child being hurt. And frankly, there's no reason for any of that to happen. There truly isn't. All we need to do is make sure we prepare, make sure we do the appropriate work. And tell you what, when people say things like, oh, I don't have the energy to train the dog before the baby comes, well, you've got to find that energy somewhere, because when the baby comes, it's going to be a lot more tiring than you think right now. You know, it absolutely blows your mind how much effort it actually takes. And people need to get over that before a baby arrives or before a dog arrives. And because if you don't put in the work, I promise you, you're going to wish that you did after the fact. Okay? So, in summary, a strong, safe bond between dogs and kids is important if you've got them in the same house. This is why we play. This is why we have the kids involved. You must be doing that. Clear communication and understanding is paramount. The kids need to respect the dogs, and yes, the dogs need to respect the kids. And again, we will be addressing that, don't worry. But respect and communication is incredibly, incredibly important. The kids need to understand what the dogs are trying to tell them, at least at the very basic level, so that they can then come to an adult to clarify. I tell you what, guys, I can't stress this enough. It breaks my heart when I hear things like this. If anybody out there knows of somebody with a dog and kids that are struggling, knows somebody like grandparents, aunties, uncles that have dogs, that have kids coming around regularly, or knows somebody with kids that regularly visit people with dogs, please share this podcast, not just for this episode, but for the episodes that are coming up. Please follow our Instagram, because we've got a lot of short videos with good little tips on kids and dogs as well. This is something that is very, very close to my heart, something that I really feel strongly about. So please do share this. Please spread the word about making sure that people need to be looking after their kids around dogs, or dogs around kids, and teaching everybody to make sure they're not doing anything foolish, so that people are safe and comfortable around everybody. Okay. I do hope that this episode didn't come off kind of ranty. It's as you can tell, it's something that I really feel strongly about. There's a lot more information on it. I could have gone on a lot longer, but I know that if I went on too long, it wouldn't have been very entertaining for people. So please ask your questions, share the podcast, follow us on Instagram, Spotify. We appreciate everything you guys do for us, every like, every share, every follow. It really helps us get the message out. It helps us help more people, helps us help more dogs, and it helps us help more families. So it is something that I truly appreciate. If you are so inclined, we do have a Patreon. That's on the link in the podcast notes. If you go onto our website for the podcast, find us on Spotify, anything like that. It's always appreciated for that one as well. And if you have any topics that you would like addressed on this podcast, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. And with that, guys, I will wish you all a happy couple of weeks ahead, and I will talk to you in 2 weeks' time when we have the next episode of the Wagging Tales podcast. Cheers.